Going to have the risers and the losers of week 1. Now, risers, obviously, who showed up? Who looked good? Who had some questions, yet prevailed? First up, and this is I'm only doing 5 teams, and this isn't not saying they look the best out of all these other teams. It's all just teams came straight to my head, started typing up. First one is the Houston Cougars. Now, we don't like talking about playoffs, so, week 1. We like to give our little predictions, and then that's about it until we get to the college football playoff poll. But Houston, they get the exemption. They get the exemption because of the fact that had they lost to Oklahoma, their playoff ticket is gone. The only way Houston would have made the playoffs is if the top 3 teams had at least one loss. Number 1 could have had, no losses. They could have been undefeated. But 2 and 3 and 4 would have to have at least one loss. And that 4th team, that 3rd and 4th team, and maybe in that 5th team, have to have 2 losses for Houston and make a debate on whether or not they should get in. And I know, they would have lost to Oklahoma, right? And Oklahoma's pretty good. Yeah, but the college football committee, they don't look at it like that. They're going to look at Houston. You couldn't beat the big team. You're not going to the playoffs. So Houston had to win this game for them to even be in the discussion, and now they're a serious contender. And I think, obviously, we saw Houston showed up. Houston showed up and dominated Oklahoma throughout the game. First quarter, I think it's easy to say both teams were still obviously trying to figure each other out, and it gave us one heck of a quarter. It gave us one heck of a game. But Houston just, in the second half, made the adjustments where they showed how dominant they were, and they took that anger of you being a group of 5 member, you not being in the Big 12, you can't stay with us, and they took all of it out on Oklahoma and dominated that game and just pushed the offensive line of Oklahoma like crazy. And Ed Oliver is an absolute stud. We knew it going into the season that this guy had the potential and the ceiling to be one of the top defenders a couple years down the line. And he's already showed that he's already up there. He's made some huge strides, and he's got some serious talent. So Houston, they've got him for at least another 2 years after this season. So Houston, definitely one of the biggest risers this week and a very serious contender. Up next is Baylor. Now, as a TCU fan, it hurt me, but I'm not biased here. No bias on the Short Sports Show. Not here. Not going to find it here. Maybe sometimes, but very little. Very, very little. Now, after losses and a terrible offseason this past year for Baylor, Baylor responded with a dominating victory over Northwestern State, in which they should. It's Northwestern State, but, and again, they're supposed to win this game big time. They won 55-7, but knowing that Seth Russell was completely healthy, and he looked good out there. He didn't look like he missed a step at all. And Katie Cannon looked as good as well. Shock Linwood looked really good. The defense looked a lot better. And it was Northwestern State. It's one of the cupcake games that Baylor always plays. They got about 3 more on the schedule. But it was good to see for Baylor fans out there that, hey, you still have a very talented team. You still have something potentially special at Baylor, football-wise. So it was good to see that Baylor, they're healthy, and they looked almost like a complete team. They really did. And now you just got to see what they look like against some better teams and non-Northwestern State type teams. Another team is the UW Huskies. University of Washington. Huskies look like one of the most complete teams out there. Offensively, defensively, special teams. They look like the most complete team out of everybody. They really did. Now, they played Rutgers, which, solid. It's okay. But they had a resounding victory over the weekend against Rutgers, a 48-13 victory. Jake Browning to John Ross was just a beautiful connection to watch over and over and over again. And again, the UW's their defense looks, it's going to be the best in the Pac-12, that's for sure. And it's going to be one of the best in the country this season. It really is. UW looked, again, I'll say it over and over, they look like the most complete team in the country this past week. And now they get Idaho this week, so I'm not going to, that's about much love I'm going to give the UW Huskies right now. They moved up from 14-8 in the AP poll. And, it's Idaho. I don't even know why they have a football program. It's terrible. Have you seen their home stadium? It holds about 18,000. That's tops. 18,000 people. It's a damn basketball arena. And no disrespect to Syracuse, but it's a much worse stadium here. Next is Georgia. Now, they had a close game against North Carolina, but the return of Nick Chubb. Woo, man, he looked dominant out there. It was special. The Heisman dark horse rushed over 32 times, had 222 yards and 2 touchdowns, and also Georgia found their quarterback of the future with Jacob Eason. There was hype going into him in the offseason as a freshman. Could he be the guy? Had a strong arm, but could translate into week 1. Could it translate straight into college football? And he looked mature enough. He handled the situations. It wasn't the prettiest stat line, but he got the job done, and it's only going to get better. Georgia and Nick Chubb. Thank you, Nick Chubb, for coming back. He looked great out there, and it's going to be good. It's going to be good for Nick Chubb. And finally, this one kills me. Texas. Texas. Is Texas back? Well, we won't know that till midseason. Now, of course, Texas fans, they're going to tell you, oh yeah, they're definitely back. It's Big 12 championship. It's college football championship. Yeah, that's all you're going to hear from Texas fans. So just ignore them. But we do know that this is a very different team. Very different Texas team. No doubt about it. The most improved team. But there's still questions. Defensively, need to get better. Offensively, it was fast, but you also saw the inexperience of running that up-tempo offense. John Burt looked like the best receiver, but he also looked like the worst receiver with I don't know how many drops. And Charlie Strong, he saved himself another year or two, which is great. I love Charlie Strong, and I said it when University of Texas hired Charlie Strong from Louisville. One, I didn't want them to hire him because I knew he could turn that program back to what it was, right? Back to continually being a top 10, top 5 program in the country. As a TCU fan, I didn't want him to be there. He was hired, and I was like, all right, give it a couple years. He's going to turn that program around. And it finally happened. Now, I'm not jumping on the Longhorns hype train. Not for what? Not till I see what they look like at Oklahoma State in 3 weeks from now. When I see that, and if they can dominate Oklahoma State on the road, I'm sold on Texas. I'm sold on Texas if that happens. If they struggle, then I know they are still not the team that everybody's saying they're going to win 9 games, 8 games this season. If they can't look good against Oklahoma State on the road, which is very tough to do, but with all the hype they're getting, number 11 into the country now, number 11, and it's only going to get higher because they got UTEP this upcoming week, and then they have at Cal, which they should win both games. It's only going to get higher. There'll be most likely, depending on what we see, if anybody drops, we could potentially see a top number 5 Texas team against a top 15 Oklahoma State team by then. So we'll see what Texas looks like once that happens. Now, Shane Buechele, which I got the name right this time. I was saying Buechele or something like that before. Shane Buechele looked good out there. He did. And this 2-quarterback system, I don't know how long it's going to work, but this season with the game planning of it might be successful this year. And Tyrone Swoops, he's a senior, so he's going to be gone next year, and it's going to be all Buechele trained from there. Texas is definitely on the right track. I'm not a Texas hater. I'm not. But at the same time, I'm realistic here. and the defense still shows its struggles. And the Notre Dame, Deshaun Kaiser, great quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks in the country. But there's a lot better offenses in the Big 12 alone that are better than Notre Dame's. And Texas will have to compete with that each and every week here pretty soon. Can they do that? We'll see. Honorable mentions, though, Texas A&M, Iowa, Wisconsin, Texas State. Huge win for them. Michigan, Ohio State, and Florida State were all risers this week as well, but I believe those 5 teams just got a little bit more love. So what about the losers of the week, right? The fallers, the losers. That'd have to be UCLA. Josh Rosen and the Bruins were one of the biggest disappointments this past week. I had them beating Texas A&M by, I think I said a touchdown or 2. Pretty sure I said 2 touchdowns. And they just failed offensively. Very badly. 3 bad interceptions and really no offense. There was no offense of UCLA until the fourth quarter. And the Bruins, they just got pushed around. They really did. And I bet Josh Rosen now knows the difference between 50,000 screaming drunk fans at Kyle Field from 50,000 to about 100,000 of them. Because it was definitely there. It was definitely there. And he struggled. He did not look like the Rosen one, which is a stupid name. And it was shocking. I really thought UCLA was the better team than Texas A&M. I knew Texas A&M defense going into it, but I really assumed that UCLA would be able to handle this with the whole offseason prepare for this A&M defense. And really with Rosen at quarterback, I really believed that UCLA would have got the job done, and they failed. Next up is Oregon. It was a very sloppy game against UC Davis. Now, Royce Freeman was about the only bright spot for the Oregon Ducks, but this game should have been a 60-10, 60-17 type of game. It was not so much. Like 58-23. Oregon, it was still showing they had some defensive issues that has not been fixed over the past several years now, and it's a little worrisome how they're going to go into the Pac-12 playing some really good teams, and I don't think they're going to compete. This might be an 8-4 type of Oregon team, which is weird to say. And I was talking to my cousin Carlos yesterday. We were out throwing, and it hit me knowing that there's really not a star on this Oregon team like in several years, like the past several years have been. You know, we had DeAnthony Thomas, you had Marcus Mariota, of course, Mariota going to be the main guy. Number 24, not Thomas Tyner, the guy before him, the running back. Played for Barner. Yeah, Barner. You had LaMichael James. You always had that one guy. Now, Royce Freeman, he's probably that guy, but I don't feel like he gets that same star status as DeAnthony Thomas did back when he was at Oregon. It's very weird. Now, I'm not saying this Oregon team's bad, but it's looking like an 8-4 type of Oregon team. After that, of course, the Oklahoma Sooners, they were just outplayed and worse. They were outcoached by the Houston Cougars. Now, I'm not going to go too crazy on OU because, they have a tough schedule. They got Ohio State here soon. They have to get ready for that. That'll be an exciting game. They could always bounce back from that. And obviously the Big 12 schedule and who they played there. I'm not going to go too crazy on OU. They lost to a really good Houston team, but with all the media hype that they got and Baker Mayfield going in, you really thought OU wouldn't get pushed around like they did. You really thought it'd been the opposite, and they were the ones that got pushed around. They look like the little brothers. We'll see. Florida Gators. Man, that game was just I didn't even want to watch it. It was boring. It was ugly. They beat UMass 24-7. I didn't even want to watch the highlights. It was ugly. It was ugly. Florida Gators need to fix it because, man, what a waste of talent on that team because it just looked bad. And, of course, the last team, the losers of the week, has to go to LSU. was so much talk about a brand new offense, the hype with Leonard Fournette, which I still love Leonard Fournette, and Brandon Harris stepping up as quarterback. Looked like the same LSU team that we've seen the past several years. A lot of talent, no offense. No offense. And I feel bad for Brandon Harris. I feel bad for him, but he's bad. He is bad. It's bad. And it's weird to think that there's so much talent in the state of Louisiana, and LSU being the big top dog school and always recruiting, always being in the top 5 of recruiting. They cannot get a quarterback. They cannot get a quarterback. They can get D linemen, corners, receivers. Oh, they get every single position, kickers and punters as well. They get the top of the best, but they cannot get a good quarterback. It's very strange. It's very strange. Now, credit to Wisconsin's defense, but when you have the best running back in the country, you should be able to set that running game up so well that the passing game, it just takes an average quarterback to get the job done. And sadly, it looks like Brandon Harris is not even an average quarterback. He might be one of the worst quarterbacks on a top team, which LSU is no longer a top team. It's now the 21st team in the country right now. But Cameron and Harris, not working out. Honorable mentions for the losers is, of course, Ole Miss, giving up a huge lead in what was a dominating fashion victory had it only been a 2-quarter game. Switched very quickly. Notre Dame, obviously my TCU Horned Frogs, I'll admit it, defense was terrible. Almost lost to South Dakota State. Not North Dakota State, South Dakota State. Auburn just looked ugly. USC, I knew they were going to get blown out, but I kind of felt bad because watching that pregame, I kind of wanted them to win. And Michigan State, terrible victory over Furman. But that is the risers and losers. Let me know who your risers and losers of week 1 are and who you think will be the risers and losers of week 2.